This is the agenda for today. We will be discussing on monitoring your Node.js and PHP and .NET Core applications in the global COVID-19 scenario and eliminating the application's performance issues right from the root cause for a permanent fixes. And we will be discussing on the slow database statements, which is causing the application performance issues and how to isolate and eradicate those statements, which is affecting your application performance. And finally, we will be more of into the configuring alerts for your applications in a production perspective and get some production guidelines using the App Manager solution in a global scale. So here is the problem statement, and just wanted to make sure that everyone is safe during the global pandemic of COVID-19. And considering this scenario, let's see how the organizations were managing their IT systems in this current trend of remote IT folks. As we all know that most of the segments of the IT workforce have gone remote. And again, companies are switching to the digital-only strategies to deliver services and the products they offer. So millions of people were accessing websites and applications for data and information. So considering all these factors, the pressure on the technology and the people running IT departments all over the world has been increased. In fact, I would say that the world has changed almost overnight with no chance to in fact prepare for this scenario. So IT teams are facing a brand new set of priorities which they have never faced earlier, and the administrators or application owners are suddenly under immense pressure to handle such kind of scenario wherein they have to deliver the infrastructure solutions in a very positive way, infrastructure monitoring, application monitoring, and security vulnerabilities for handling your applications while you work remotely. And all this is required to maintain the world-class digital experiences, either both internally or externally. All you have to do this in a more real-time scenario to a period of massive change while you work remotely. So let's see the common challenges which were faced by the IT monitoring teams during the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of the system administrators or the monitoring teams say that 80% of the challenge is in terms of monitoring the spike in the business application traffic. So, and again, 80% of the users or the system engineers or the data center admins say that providing a positive digital customer experience across all the channels is now most important. Either they provide the application or the services online or offline in a different secured way or in a non-secured way, whatever the mode is. Providing the positive digital experience for all the channels is very important. Mostly when it comes to the healthcare sectors, the load is tremendous. And the administrators say that the lack of unified visibility. So people say that they use multiple tools, and accessing multiple tools while you work remotely is again a challenge. So some teams have an access to one specific tool, and other team is having an access to another tool. While you work remotely, there is a lot of VPN restrictions, and a single set of solution is required to manage your complete technology stack in a unified environment. So most of the 70% of the admin says that it's a challenge. And since most of the teams work remotely and in a distributed way, the collaboration needs to be increased. When you collaborate and work with more of the technical team or non-technical team or with the end users, so managing the mean time to time repair ratio is quite important. So most of the users get a huge number of requests from the customers again. So let's see how Manage Engine Applications Performance Management solution will help you to tackle all these challenges in a more secured and with using a modified and modern approach. So before we get into the solution proposal for all these challenges or the problem statements, let's see the top 3 digital workforce challenges while you monitor your web application in this pandemic. Most of the teams say that there is a spike in the tickets from the monitoring teams because the users working remotely, most of the applications, the internet load is high, the load to your web server is high, due to which there is a spike in the request, which the applications team has to handle in a more efficient and in a more prompt way. And since we work remotely, expanding the bandwidth to access a specific system resources is very much important than ever. That is, expanding your bandwidth and network capacity is most important. In face of this pandemic, the greater number of technologists says that they need to fulfill the potential and drive new innovation and perform at a very highest level. Not in the future, in fact, but today, this is how the business have to act smarter and our wider communities can respond most effectively and quickly to the current crisis, and how we can rebuild our economies and the businesses and drive growth in the upcoming months post a global pandemic. So there is an increased amount of vulnerability challenges that the teams were facing, and corporate IT, VPN, or SSO related challenges. So these were the common challenges where most 88% of the application stakeholders reported when there is a survey conducted by a global network vendor. So COVID-19 is it's like a challenge like no other. Most of the viruses where we know previously, this is something different. It is impacting the human life along with the economic, a challenge like no other, I would say. The COVID-19 is impacting the technology departments across the globe in a way that was unimaginable just a few months back, right? So the administrators have to find themselves spearheading their organizations to respond back to this biggest global economic crisis for the generation, and in many cases with an immediate survival of their business resting on their shoulders. So considering all these factors, let's see how APM Insight can help you to solve these problems as a proposal for these challenges. Let's get into the technical topic for today. That is gaining code level visibility into Node.js and PHP applications. So before we get into the topic, let's make more hands-on and a practical approach for solving this. Consider a scenario of handling or maintaining a healthcare application. There is a complaint from a hospital admin saying that they were unable to find a record of the patient. And this complaint is logged by an IT L1 team as a monitoring request, and it is routed back to the developers team, and the developers team again check for the issue, routed back to the server admin, and again it reaches to the IT manager to check the server resources. So this is the current DevOps scenario wherein they troubleshoot a problem. So considering this case, let's see the common technical reasons on why your applications might be slow. Either it could be a healthcare application, or it's a finance application, or it's an e-commerce based application. Whatever the application is, it's a web application. Since it's a web application, it definitely uses a web server, database, third-party APIs, cloud-related components, and apart from this, few more cloud resources. So all these components were integrated with each other to keep your web applications up and running. If any of these component goes down, that's where you will be noticing an issue, or you will be getting a complaint from the so and so teams. Common reasons would be request overload by the web server, spike in the user related sessions, and load balancer failure. Other reason would be memory usage. That is, if the memory, that is, if the application uses, your application code uses a lot of memory, then your application will run out of the memory exceptions, which could cause slowness to a specific business related transaction in your web application, which needs immediate attention. And the next information is memory leak due to the inefficient threading components. So that is something which needs immediate attention. And other reason would be buggy application code. If your application code itself is having an issue, and how to find which specific code is having an issue, or which specific SQL statement is having an issue. So that's what we will be discussing in the solution proposal for today. And mostly we'll be discussing on finding the slow DB calls, finding the stack traces to fix the issues, along with the code level diagnostics. So let's see the previous scenario on how the IT teams were acting, were operating, and how they need to shift to a modern approach during this global pandemic. So this is the most of the scenarios, either before pandemic or the post pandemic, how people react to an application performance troubleshooting is when you get a complaint from the user. That is, we wait for a complaint from the user. If there is a complaint, then we react. That's a reactive approach of solving a problem. So the IT team receive a complaint. It is forwarded to the monitoring teams, raise a ticket, and the ticket is forwarded to the developers. Developers get the logs from the specific environment to find the issue. Sometimes they may be able to reproduce the issue. Sometimes they may not be able to reproduce the issue. So then they perform the app code analysis to find an issue. And if they find an issue, they build a fix for it. So if you ask, what's the disadvantages in this specific way of troubleshooting? Mean time to time repair issue is very high. When a user reports an issue by 9 a.m., saying that they are unable to find a record of the patient, it should be resolved within 10 to 15 minutes. And if they say that it takes time and takes nearly 30 minutes or 1 hour to fix this issue, then ideally we are working with the human life, which is most important rather than in business. So the criticality of this healthcare applications is most important than a healthcare application. So how you need to shift to a modern approach, considering the disadvantages in this module. So let's see the modern approach. So using the ManageEngine Applications Performance Manager, when you deploy an agent, so for your applications, inside your applications, and the agent we support is Node.js, PHP, .NET Core, Java. So these are all the various agents that we support for monitoring, which includes Ruby on Rails too. So using a modern way of approach, one get an app-dev score. That is, instead of a reactive approach on getting a complaint from the users and then solving it, let's go into the proactive approach of monitoring. Let's be in a safer side for the healthcare applications. That is, get an app-dev score, which acts as a single point of service level agreement for your application performance. And the next is the overall average response time of your web application and the throughput, which helps you to see how your web application can respond if there is a search in the request from the users. So what do I mean by a request from the user is your customers or the end users will be accessing your application from a different path, and they will be accessing the application from a browser. They hit the URL and it is processed by an ICMP package, and it reaches the load balancer, and the load balancer route the request to an least available, the available web server, and the web server again responds back to the request and search for a record in the database, and then all it's a continuous chain related activities which happens in the backend when at the moment the user initiates their journey with the application. So this needs in continuous monitoring, which includes the errors, whichever is happening in your applications. So that's what we will be discussing in the today's session, focusing more on the proactive and in a more systematic way. So if you ask, deploying an APM Insight agent doesn't require any intensive training. So IT teams can simply plug and play and can get started with this monitoring. So all they need is they just need to know what are all the metrics which they will get benefited using this solution, and based upon business requirements, someone can get started. So application performance management is divided, wherein you could see the app deck score, which gives you the satisfied count of your web application. So 92% of the web app users, whoever is accessing your web application, we're happy with the performance of your web application. Tolerating is 7.9% and frustrated is 0.1%, which gives you an overall count of your web application's happiness rating. So with this, I'll take you to the GUI and show you how you can get started with the application performance monitoring using the ManageEngine Applications Manager. In case if any of you need any help, documentation, or download link for the APM Insight agent or for the ManageEngine Applications Manager, you can reply back in the chat panel. Our solution experts will send you the link along with the help documentation and installation manual. Feel free to ask any questions if you have in the chat panel. So let's get started. When you click this APM Insight, after installing the Applications Manager, you can access the App Manager using its host name and port number, which is something available in the URL. So the default port is 9090 again. So let's get started on how you can configure your web application monitoring. So the first step, when you click the APM Insight page, all you have to do is just choose download right here. So this will take you to our documentation on our website, wherein you can download the agent based upon your application stack. If you're using a Java application, you download the Java agent. If it's a PHP application, download the PHP agent. Along with that, you have the installation tips on the right-hand side. So let me take you an example for a Node.js agent. I have already downloaded the agent, so I'm skipping this step. Let's get started with the installation tips by choosing this. So the first step is installing the Node.js agent. Upon downloading the Node.js agent, just try to copy the agent to your application server, and then include the following code in the first line of your Node.js application source code before any other required statement. And you have to replace the values with the required values for your setup. So let me take you to my application source code. So this is the Node.js application source code which I have. app.js is the configuration file. And I have already copied the required statements from the help documentation. What I have replaced is the license key. You can obtain the license key from the same APM Insight page where you have clicked the download option. And you can provide a display name for your web application. And the same name will be displayed in the APM Insight page of the App Manager. And this port refers to the port of your Node.js application. That is 3000 is the port of my web application. And the APM host is the machine name where you have installed Applications Manager, the box where you have installed App Manager. And the APM port refers to 8443, which is your SSL port. Upon adding this information, all you have to do is simply restart your Node.js application. The moment you restart your application, you should be able to see the data in the app manager. The agent will collect the data from your Node.js application every 1 minute and push the data to the Applications Manager GUI so that you can view all the data in a centralized and in a more efficient way, fetch the report, get business intelligence analytics as well. So uh, let me take you to the product GUI and I'll show you how the data looks like. So upon restarting your web application, since I have already added an application, you should be seeing your app name here. Upon just choosing this, you can see historical information of your web application in a more efficient way with a beautiful GUI. So you could see the app decks. That is, most of the users who are accessing the application were happy with this performance. Average response time, that is 15.9 milliseconds. Throughput is 1.88 RPM. Request count is something 2,700 seconds. I mean, the request count is 2,700 hits that the web server is receiving. And you can see the agent last communicated time again, and the response time broken by the components, which includes the HTTP call, PG-SQL, and app code information. And the app code information with the graphical data is available, request throughput, exception count, error count information in a more efficient way. So considering these factors, you can also see the split up by the exception. So this is the exception component, that is unknown host exception, and the HTTP error rates, top 5 transactions based on the response time, and the top 5 transactions based on the slow traces, along with its complete front-end information. So you could see the error transactions too right here. So most importantly, this dashboard will show you the top 5 slow traces, and this is one of the traces which is having an highest response time admin action.do. So with this trace, you need to drill down again. So the upcoming slide, let's get into the theoretical concepts on how we can identify these slow database statements, and then I will show you in the GUI how we can assign the data for a clear understanding. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask the same. Let's get back to the presentation and continue from where we have left. Isolate and identify slow database statements. So the first step, right, since considering you as a very beginner, most of the attendees, right? So if you're not sure on where to start, focus on the business transactions. Find the slow business transactions based upon the logics and get the user response time and the split up of the app components based on the high response time. Find the database calls, get the traces of the database operations, and understand the time spent on various SQL statements, which is again one of the most important activity that one needs to ensure. So let me take you back to the GUI and I'll show you those. So we are to the App Manager GUI now. So as I said, you focus on transactions. On that would be the key to get started. So here you can find the transactions. So sort it based on the AppTech score or based on the maximum response time. So this is one of the transaction which is having the high response time. So which needs immediate attention, or one needs to analyze why this transaction, or someone needs to analyze why this page is having slowness when a user is performing a transaction with this method. So let's drill down and see to get started. You could see the sub transactions along with the response time, CPU time, external calls, exception count, SQL time. And in fact, I was talking about finding the traces of the database operations and understanding the time spent on various SQL statements. So to help you with this behavior, I would like to show you this specific request. And in fact, you can find the error request which is happening To get started with the DB calls, when you click the database tab right here, you can understand the complete throughput with specific to an front-end method based on the user transaction. So this will be average response time, that is 65 milliseconds for this. So when you click that, you can find the database operations by its caller value. So this is the most important. So when somebody clicks this page, mypage.do, as a result of that, this query is executed, which is having a high response time. So now we have found that this, as a result of this transaction, this is the SQL query being executed. So this is the first step to find what exactly happening in your web application in a more proactive and modern approach in this current global pandemic scenario. So when you perform such kind of actions, in fact, I would like to give you a real-time example based on a research that the technologists say. So most of the people are experiencing pressure from all sides because accelerating digital transformation projects, mobilizing huge sections of the workforce to operate from home, while at the same time needing to maintain or manage their network and maintaining the security throughout the technology stack. So this is one of the challenges that most of the people are facing. In fact, everything has changed. Structures and processes have been turned upside down, and priorities have radically shifted, with individual roles and responsibilities having an adaptation to meet those kind of changes. So the administrators were forced to meet these changes during this pandemic situations. So how the digital transformation can help you to meet this urgent needs. So most of these organizations need to adapt for and go to market strategy. Also, they have to create and launch new digital services and applications in the current environment. As a result, the administrators were now asked to deliver major healthcare application transformation projects in an unthinkable time frames due to this scenario, and how one can deliver or ensure that you provide an flawless customer experience eh, specifically for healthcare or whatsoever industry that you are focusing on. So that is quite important. So there is a need to push through the initiatives, more of a multi-year digital transformation programs, and how ManageEngine Applications Manager can help you is by providing an such insight of the data of your web applications in a very short period of time. So that's what the MTTR is again very less when you use the right set of solutions for managing your applications. So with this, let me take you to the GU product presentation and get started with the next topic for today. That is the eliminating the performance barriers by analyzing the stack traces. So the first step for this specific case is how you can find the performance barriers which is affecting your application performance, right? So let's take a use case for the same healthcare industry. So you need to start finding the specific RCA which is impacting the end user happiness. And you, since you're directly focusing on finding the problem itself, that is finding the RCA which is causing the CPU or memory spike, the time spent with the support or QA team is drastically reduced than ever before. And once you find which specific component is impacting the happiness, you need to drill down and see the internal code level diagnostics which is causing slowness to your application. So when you see a healthcare application, as I was saying earlier, when an attendee of in a hospital is trying to fetch a record, historical record of a patient, and patient slowness. So what happens in the backend is there's a big SQL query which is executed in the backend, due to which it tries to pull a large number of records from the database and try to show that in the GUI, which is causing slowness to the transaction, and the attendee is still waiting for the data for more than 15 minutes for the transaction to be completed so that the doctors can investigate for the patient's solution. So once you have found which specific business transaction is affected in your applications, get an insight into the problematic code itself. So now you have found that call to an external database is cause of the situation where it tries to pull huge number of database from an external database. There could be multiple network level latencies or a loss in the ICMP packets. So now it's turn of the developers to perform rapid iterations to ensure the stable application performance. So with such a increased pressure in the developers to deliver projects or applications performance monitoring at an incredible pace, in fact, there is no time for lengthy planning cycles and comprehensive proof of concept testings. So compromises have to be struck, and many application monitoring teams are concerned that future proofing is taking a backseat. So as they are currently focusing on delivering the solutions whichever is required on focusing those. So in fact, various industries across multiple sectors are recognizing that having a real-time visibility and insight into the application performance is most important, so that they can identify and resolve issues immediately and consistently, so that they can deliver a world-class digital experiences, which will help them to make right decisions for long-term value with their end user or the customers for long-term businesses. So let's switch me back to the GUI. So this is the application manager GUI, and let's see how we can identify the traces which will help you to fix these issues. So as I was talking earlier, you can sort it again based on its response time and other critical information, which looks something like this. So it's sorted based on the response time. So this is the transaction which needs immediate attention. I'm clicking that and see what exactly is happening inside that. So when you scroll down in this page, you should be able to see the high-level details of the transaction, which includes the slowest method, calls, and counts information in a very detailed perspective. So you can find that the count is 3 for this, and duration is 9 milliseconds. And when this method is being called get version details is the method name. So when that method is performed by a user, which is in this case, this seems to be a backend transaction, and due to an external API, so you can see the SQL query and its count, with its method level information and its external calls count for a high level visibility. And again, if you want to drill down and see, get the trace details right here. So when you click the trace details, you can find the complete details of this transaction with its internal code level invocations right here. And you can see the SQL statements. Select user ID from the specific table, that's the SQL statements, along with the timestamp and the execution time, remote external calls if there is any. So you can see that these were the remote external calls, which is clearly mentioned along with the complete information. And you could also see the PG SQL entries from the same. And other traces of this transaction. So this gives you those information too. So considering these information, you can get a full stack view of your application performance monitoring. So in fact, unsurprisingly, given this scale and urgency of this scenario of the task at the hand, so the application monitoring teams are encountering many challenges as they navigate while performing these changes. So this ranges from handling dramatic increases in the website traffic, and demand for the application availability is again increased for its expanding capabilities to maintain the self-service and digital sales and MTTR while operating in a most secure IT teams itself. So in fact, what is important for the businesses in this specific scenario is choosing a right technology stack in a more agile way. So today, the application is the business, and more than ever, administrators find ways to ensure that they have access to the tools. Accurate data decisions needs to be informed, and strategic decisions have to be chosen while you view this data itself and connect application and digital performance outcomes for a successful business outcomes. So again, considering these factors, organizations now needs to recognize that only with the right actionable insights, technologies can deliver the highest level of performance across all the digital services and enhancing digital experiences for our customers during this pandemic and beyond. So let's see the benefits. We have discussed about the problem statements and the solutions and see the benefits of using an unified APM solution. Let's get into the presentation. So this is the benefits of using an unified APM application availability, that is high availability of your web application, which will help you to increase the revenue. In fact, cost reduction. Since you are focusing on solving the problems itself, there is no need to add an expensive hardware to solve the application related performance problems rather than you're focusing on fixing the issue itself. Compliance tracking. Since most of the users work remotely, it's important to make sure that the application usage is tracked effectively. In fact, since as we all know that challenging or mobilizing the remote IT folk is again an important task. So a recent study, in fact, reveals challenges in providing an optimum digital experiences to your workforce. That is, in many cases, now we're entirely remote and unfamiliar with the application and platforms. They need to be away from the office. So larger sections of the workforce have suddenly found themselves working at home without the required network connectivity or devices and softwares to be effective and equipped with the new technologies, and often lacking the skills and knowledge to resolve the simple IT issues. And how to tackle all these problems is to have an collaborative and efficient way. And in fact, that's fallen to the IT department to tackle all these problems. So that's an increase in the operational efficiency when you deploy an automated performance monitoring solution centralized. So digital services and applications were essential in keeping your workforces productive at home. And therefore, it is vitally important that these IT departments are able to handle huge surges in demand both effectively and in an efficient way without much stress. This means having a right tools to monitor and manage the technology stack is important, from the user experience at the application layer right through the network. So this is something important that they need to focus on. So once you identify and fix the solutions, that's a greater impact. So now let's take to the developer's approach on taking actions to solve a problem. So when a user receives and complains, so you get a ticket, and that's something that the regular workflow. So since APM Insight gives you a direct pinpoint of the exact issue, this is the slow SQL call, and this is the method. Go ahead and fix it. So now the developers attempt to fix that issue by performing a DB query optimization, or you can do an app code fine tune based upon your standard operating procedure. So let's see, what are the most essential skills needed for the monitoring teams during this COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, businesses and IT leaders need to identify and support the various system admins for the skills, vision, and determination to deliver digital transformation and innovation in this circumstances. That is quite important when you work in a productive and in a flexible way to support multi-vendor production grade applications. So not only this, in fact, enormous pressure on the monitoring teams or pressure on the DBAs have been increased, which tells that the value of the businesses has been increased a lot. This is evident in the skills that the most of the skills required is something like analytical thinking or making a smart data driven decision with accurate analytics is something important. Working in collaborated way is one of the most important technologies aspect that most of the people were saying. So it is quite important for the IT teams to arm with the data and insight they need to make smarter decisions, right? Internal structure and culture, close support from your peers, from your distributed peers across the globe. Getting the required support from your strategic technology partners is again an important point to be noted here. So considering all these factors, let's see how you can redefine this technology strategies for the future. So this impact of COVID-19 will be long lasting, far beyond the easing of restrictions, in fact, on how people work, travel, and interact. So things will not simply go back to normal. So the way we expect to use digital services and applications will be changed forever. So organizations will recognize the benefits of having a greater number of people working remotely and adopt more agile approaches. So that's what we recommend. Organizations, in fact, needs to shift more on agile approaches to all areas of the life cycle of these employees, right from the monitoring, right from onboarding and planning your devices, cost effectiveness. There will be a lot of changes outside of the work. How people will continue to connect with your friends and family, and it will be more on video calls rather than you visit in person. So most of the classes will be on online, and most of the digital services will be increased a lot. At the same time, application security and disaster recovery is something most important that the teams have to focus during this scenario. So security and the disaster recovery working remotely is quite important for the IT teams. Let's see the automation capabilities of the solution. So when you get an alert from the tool is capable of sending you a Slack-based notification and performing a script-based automation or triggering a help desk or automated tickets, trigger and thread dump or heap dump. So let's get into the final topic for today, that is streamlining the alerts and get the visualization of the application performance at granular level. So let's see what's new in this. For this, I'll take you to the App Manager GUI. So we are in the App Manager GUI. So when you choose the application right here, go to the instance view, and you can choose this option called Configure Alarms. This is something new, wherein you can associate a threshold and action, and this action is the automation which I have referred in the previous slide. By performing this, you can definitely reduce the mean time to time repair ratio during this pandemic scenario and get a proactive notifications, get a DevOps approach on solving these problems. Let's get back to the presentation. So gaining insights and making decisions faster is something that I have again explained during the scenario. So as the technology teams were stepping up to the digital systems, they are relying on the visibility and insight into the performance of the technology stack, right through the IT infrastructure to the network. They are, in fact, leveraging this intelligence to adapt to new strategies which meets the need of their customers securely and at record speed. They are reimagining the applications, securing data, transforming infrastructures, and empowering the IT teams, which is distributed in your remote places. So companies must do all they can to do support with the right monitoring tools, leadership, and support, which they need to overcome the situation of pandemic so that they can successfully swim against this pandemic with a turbulent period and emerge stronger on the other side. So using the applications manager for your tracking your Java applications to get to see all the high level information of your Java application, something like garbage collection, memory leaks, JVM dependencies, track the memory in productions, something like tracking the heap and non-heap memory, something important in terms of managing your applications. With this, we'll come to the end of the session, and I request everyone to stay connected with us for the Q&A. We will also proceed for the Q&A after this quick summary. So during this training series, we have discussed about configuring the application's performance monitoring for your Node.js application, analyzing the slow method and DB calls for the critical business transactions, configuring alarms for your production applications in terms of creating a huge, clear, descriptive alarm details for all your applications configured. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Cheers.